The Honourable Mr Paul Green.
Thank you, Madam Deputy President. It's nice to see those men in the gallery.
Point of order.
Point of order. Madam Deputy, you haven't said anything yet.
Member would resume his seat. That's the point of order.
Pursuant to the long-standing rules of this House, the wearing of badges and signs is disorderly, and the honourable member should be asked to remove it.
Well, I'll happily do that, Madam, because we're not one to break the conduct of the House. And I do apologise. I wasn't aware that would be out of order. Hence the reason I put it on my clothing.
I thank the honourable member.
And didn't hold it up. But there's no truer message than that sticker. Save our steel, Madam Deputy President. I rise before the House today on behalf of the Christian Democratic Party, also the Workers' Party. Fred tells me for years he's defended the workers right across the state. And not only that, many occasions when we've been called to negotiate, we have worked very, very hard with the unions to get what they think is a fair deal right across the state, and then a lot of those reforms that have happened over the last few years in particular.
Deputy Chair's up that end.
Yeah. But you're much more attractive. Oh, there you are, Madam Deputy Chair. Madam Deputy. However, can I just say that we do support this Steel Industry Protection Bill 2016. The object of this bill is to ensure, as far as practical, that all steel used in the public works or infrastructure constructed by or on behalf of authorities is manufactured here in Australia. First and foremost, I commend the late Dr John Kay and Mr David Shoebridge for trying to safeguard the long-term security of Port Kembla and Whyalla steel making. This bill aims to do this by ensuring that public money is spent on only Australian-made steel products. Of course, we know that the background to this is Port Kembla is known for the BlueScope Steelworks operations on Spring Hill Road and throughout North Port Kembla. And of course, Port Kembla Steelworks measures over 780 hectares. This is a massive industry. It has 4 railway stations servicing the steel making plant. It once employed more than 22,000 workers, Madam Deputy President, and now there are less than 5,000. And 500 of those, as we know, took redundancies lately. And I do want to applaud the government's initiative, along with the Christian Democratic Party and the member for Kiama, in trying to get some traineeships, 100, I think, sponsored traineeships, so many of those workers could go and reskill or refocus or do something that their passion may fall in another field. And I do acknowledge that we got those scholarships from the Small Business Minister, Beryl Arrow. And I also put on the record, by the way, I got that idea from none other than Arthur Rorris, because he told our inquiry, the vocational education inquiry, about when the 22,000 workers were being downgraded, that was the sort of initiative that was put back then. And so we were able to reinitialise such an initiative. Madam Deputy President, last year we saw the challenges faced by a regional job provider called BlueScope Steel, as we know, and of course the Christian Democratic Party, along with the government, opposition and other crossbench parties, worked to preserve BlueScope Steel Mill Port Kembla. We supported the payroll tax deferral, the BlueScope Steel Bill 2015. The bill allowed the deferral of BlueScope Steel payroll tax to the value of $60 million to be paid back over 10 years period starting from 2020. And that's, you know, we're in this together, Madam Deputy President. This is not a slap against the government or anything else. We're merely pleading a case that there may be a better way to secure those regional jobs for the longevity in terms of Illawarra and more so New South Wales, really, because any job loss in New South Wales affects any job loss in any regional town in New South Wales affects New South Wales, the whole. And so we acknowledge that this is very important. In addition to this, the unions agreed to give up 500 jobs and management undertook to reduce costs by up to $200 million. So everyone's pedalling on this bike to save this great industry of the Illawarra. This is an important example of how parties can come together to preserve Australian business interests. In particular, I would like to acknowledge the management and workers of BlueScope Steel, who are here with us today in the gallery, for their willingness to negotiate in order to preserve this great Australian company. I do note the late Dr Kay stated Consultants to the Australian Steel Institute estimate that every $1 million spent on Australian steel, over $700,000 comes back into the Australian economy. Six full-time jobs are supported, and over $200,000 of overall tax revenue is generated.
Very high churn rate.
He goes on to say, a state government procurement policy that required Australian steel to be used in all state government infrastructure projects is both affordable and rational. The additional 0.2% costs to the state's $17 billion annual infrastructure spend amounts to just $34 million a year. This is a small cost, Madam Deputy President, to avoid the potential loss of thousands of jobs in the Illawarra and billions of dollars in the loss of GDP by providing long-term security to Port Kembla blast furnace. We note that Arium Limited is an international diversified mining and materials company. Arium Mining includes the company's export iron and ore business, which achieved sales of 12.5 million tonnes of hematite ore for the 2014 financial year. Arium has mining operations at the Middleback Ranges, as well as the wholly owned Port Wale, South Australia, with a current capacity of approximately 11 million tonnes per annum. In addition to the export of iron ore business, Arium Mining also supplies iron ore to the company's integrated steel works at Whyalla. Arium's steel business is Australia's only manufacturer of steel long products, with steel making capacity of approximately 2.5 million tonnes per annum. It is also Australia's leading steel distributor and reinforcing steel supplier. Arium has been hit also by the plunge of iron ore prices and steel prices over the past 2 years. It delivered a full-year loss of about $1.9 billion in 2014 and 15. Arium says its Whyalla Steelworks in South Australia and its iron ore mining business are draining around $230 million of cash every 6 months. The company had debt of $2.1 billion in just December. Australian lenders are reportedly pushing the struggling company to go into voluntary administration, and we know there's been a lot of work there. Australia's steel industry has long complained about government inaction in the face of a slump in prices and a surge in cheaper imports, particularly from China. The Australian Workers' Union report, quote, the benefits of local procurement policy for local steel in government construction is in the BIS Shrapnel's report. And it states, and that's here, Madam Deputy President, if anyone wants to look into that report. The Australian steel industry is under severe pressure from rising imports, in particular escalating imports of cheap steel from China. A significant proportion of this steel being exported to Australia is reputed to be, quote, dumped at prices which are below the cost of production. Therefore, Madam Deputy President, a loss by the Chinese at a loss by the Chinese and other Asian producers. For the Australian steel to remain viable and profitable, it firstly needs to produce at or near at least capacity, and secondly, sell as much of its product as possible into the domestic market and sell less into the less profitable or often unprofitable exports markets where global oversupply has pushed down prices and margins. BIS Shrapnel estimates that a local content policy achieving about 90% of local steel content. It also will cost an average of $61 to $80 million annually in extra cost to the public sector, government and government business enterprises, which represents only an extra 0.2% of total construction costs for the public projects. This extra cost is based on the assumption that the prices of locally sourced steel is about 10% higher than the equivalent imported product, and based on projected import steel prices for the next 5 years. It also notes that at a cumulative $1.3 billion to real GDP over the next 5 years, which is equivalent around to 0.3% of 2014 and 15 GDP. If the extra tonnages, with an average of 690 kilos per tonne annually, were supplied by extra production from the steel makers, while leaving export tonnage constant at 850 kilos per tonne, rather than switching to sales for the public sector construction. They also noted that it would prove a substantial net benefit to the economy after accounting for only marginally higher public construction costs. Madam Deputy President, the government believes that this bill takes the wrong approach to supporting the domestic steel producers. They believe it will increase the cost of steel by 20%, be an unfair burden on New South Wales taxpayers, violate free trade agreements, add more red tape, create and duplicate supply chains, remove the incentive for the industry to innovate. The New South Wales Government has noted it's a strong supporter of local steel and local jobs within New South Wales Government being the largest purchaser of steel in any one nation. And of course they mentioned that almost 70% of the New South Wales Government's $26 billion in construction spending over the past 3 years went to New South Wales-based suppliers. And that's to be applauded. That's to be applauded. I mean, we're not trying to take away that. We just say let's just increase that, by 30% more.
Yep. Go for it, Paul.
The New South Wales Government advised they have sourced significant quantities of Australian steel for major infrastructure projects, and such as the Sydney Metro Northwest, Sydney Metro Northwest SkyTrain, the Princess Highway Gerringong upgrades, which is a fantastic project. Governments to be applauded for that. And certainly Section 3, and I look forward to 100% Australian steel being given to the third river crossing at Shoalhaven when it's announced. The Wynyard Walk, Barangaroo Ferry Hub, the M4 widening, Kempsey Bypass and Pacific Highway Immigrant Creek Bridge upgrade. So the government's doing a damn good job really in focusing a lot of that resource there. But the question is, can we do more? And we believe we can. The Australian Worker Union states domestic production now supplies less than half of the steel used in public sector construction, having lost over 5% of this share in the market since 2010. If overseas steel companies are allowed to continue to dump their steel product on local markets, domestic producers will continue to lose market share in both public and private steel markets. And I note there, it's not only that, that's not only the concern. You have to look at the life of that steel. That steel might have an end of life like 10, 20 years if there's no sort of standards or certification or someone putting the magnifying glass over the qualities of that steel. We might think we're getting a bargain, Madam Deputy Chair, but that bridge that we built thinking it's going to give us 50 or 100 years might only give us 20, and we find out it's got fractures. And guess what? Like the Hawkesbury.
Which is what Australian steel.
Which we've got to be mindful. Is that a good purchase of steel? And we would argue that, the Australian steel undergoes a great scrutiny of standardisation, and is probably the best steel in the world.
Yep. Got no argument.
No argument.
That's the best.
Well, I was just waiting for a hear. That was best steel in the world. And so there's no doubt that that's the sort of steel.
Point of order.
To the point of order.
There have been repeated rulings by the President that
I'm aware
members
of those.
conducting their debate should not be interacting with members of the gallery. I would ask you to draw the members' attention to the repeated rulings of the President not to do this, nor to encourage members of the gallery to behave in a disorderly manner.
Point of order,
making
Madam
a large
Chair.
amount of noise whilst the debate is occurring.
Point of order, Madam
To the point of order.
The members should just raise a standard number order and not give a debate on the matter. Madam Chair,
May I just say to the honourable member that I do acknowledge the point of order made by the Honourable Dr Phelps. Interjections at all times are disorderly from the gallery or within the chamber, and may I just ask the honourable member that he acknowledges that. Thank you.
thank you, Madam Deputy President, but can I just say I was hoping my colleagues would do the hear. The fact that the gallery joined in was merely an endorsement of such a great comment. Point of order. Point of order.
The Minister on the point of order.
I just want to ask that the member not canvass your ruling, firstly. This has been an orderly debate and the remarks do need to go through the chair. We have sat and listened intently. I acknowledge the intent that the member is trying to do, but we do need to make sure that the rules of debate are upheld, and I just would ask that the member direct his comments through the chair and not canvass your ruling.
Thank you. I just also would like to point out as well to the member that I do refer to the numerous rulings that members must address their remarks through the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Deputy President. If overseas steel companies are allowed to continue to dump their steel product on local markets, domestic producers will continue to lose market share in both public and private steel markets. Madam Deputy President, this bill aims to address this shortfall by ensuring that the public money is spent on only Australian-made steel products. We need to ensure the long-term security of New South Wales steel making and ensure that New South Wales regional jobs are also secured. Australia's steel industry employs around 90,000 people directly and indirectly and has an annual turnover of about $30 billion. The integrated Australian steel channel typically holds in excess of over 2 million tonnes of inventory available through distributors located on over 300 sites across the country. So, Madam Deputy President, I don't normally get a bit cheeky in my speeches, and I acknowledge Dr. Peter Phelps. I've certainly sat in your position hearing some of his comments, and I understand where he's coming from, and so I have taken a bit of liberty to have a bit of a jovial comment on certain things. But can I say there's nothing more serious. There's nothing more serious than in this situation. Madam Deputy President, I have stood here for nearly 6 years defending regional jobs. And when it comes to Jeremy Buckingham trying to repeal the biofuel bill, which will basically impact up to 10,000 jobs in regional New South Wales, when it comes to defending the chaplains' jobs of New South Wales, or those people that are actually contributing to the steel industry, or those people that are losing their jobs down at Pentair, or whether those people, the people in the Australian paper, have lost their jobs, I have stood here consistently defending regional jobs. And if I can find a way to save a job in regional New South Wales, I will stand up here and do it. And yes, we go a bit against the grain for 100% Australian steel, but it's not the 100% Australian steel. If we've just seen that topic, we've missed it. In regional New South Wales, it is easier to keep a job than to have to create a new one. And if we don't keep those jobs, those people not only have social disruption in their family, in their marriage, or in their unit, or their family. They can't pay the mortgage, they can't pay the power bill, they can't get in the car, they can't put fuel in it to last a week, they don't put food on the table, their kids can't be educated, and they don't have money to live what we call quality of life. That's what it comes down to. So this bill isn't really 100% Australian steel. This bill is still another bill in this House that says we must be mindful out in regional rural New South Wales, it's easier to keep a job than to have to create a new one. And this House needs to be in a position that we are mindful of those people out in regional rural New South Wales that are lucky to keep their jobs, because it's getting tougher out in regional New South Wales. It's getting harder to maintain those jobs. And it's sure as easy to be in this place to continue to speak in this House to defend all those mums and dads, seniors, kids, whoever it may be that are affected by our decisions in this House. This is an opportunity for us to have buy-in to their lives, their dreams, the security of their job, that they may have a quality of life that most of us are in here fighting for day after day. We commend the bill to the House.
Mr Scott McDonald.